Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this Future Student webinar. We're delighted to have Dr. Pauline Garvey with us from the Department of Anthropology and also Dr. Kieren Doyle from the Global Development Centre. We're going to have a presentation from each. Pauline is going to go first and followed by Kieren. And then after the two little presentations, we will have time for questions if there are any. This has been recorded, so we will share it with you also after the event. So, Pauline, if you'd like to go ahead there and start sharing, that'd be great.
Okay, great. Thank you. And welcome everyone. And Deirdre, you can see my slides, I hope, and everybody can see them. Okay. All right, so welcome everybody. I'm going to be talking about postgraduate options in anthropology. And I'm a professor in the Department of Anthropology. And afterwards, as Deirdre said, my colleague Kieren will talk about the Centre of Global Development. So we have a Department of Anthropology and Centre of Global Development. So we're both going to talk to you today a little bit about what we offer. For those of you who are not from Maynooth, it's just worth mentioning that Maynooth is one of the top 3 young universities in Ireland. We're located about 24 kilometres outside of Dublin. We are a very sort of dynamic university town, a beautiful campus, because even though we are a young university, our academic legacy in Maynooth goes back hundreds of years. So we have some beautiful old buildings as well as a very sort of modern, cutting edge buildings too. That's where the Department of Anthropology is located. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary just a little over a year ago. And we're the only department, the only university in Ireland that offers a department in anthropology. So if you're interested in studying anthropology in Ireland, do please look us up. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about now is a little bit about our offerings in anthropology at level. And also a little bit about why anthropology is important from our perspective. So there's a couple of pathways in which students come to us to study anthropology. I think the most common is the MA, which is 1 year, 3 semesters. So it's quite an intensive course. It runs over 12 months. Students start in September and they end up finishing the following early October, late September, and they're usually working on a master's thesis over the summer. And even though it's quite intensive, we do try to cluster our teaching into a couple of days so that our master's students aren't in Maynooth every single day of the week. It allows them to be a bit more flexible in how they're organizing their time. But usually maybe 2 days a week that they're in the department, and those are quite long days, quite intensive. But then the other days they have time to catch up on their reading, carry out research or whatever. So that's the master's program, and that tends to be the most common. There is a part-time master's program, which is conducted over 2 years, and that is also something that people occasionally show interest in. We have a 2-year research degree, which is called an MLit. And also occasionally students come to us and they feel that they're not ready really to take on a full master's degree, so they do the certificate, a postgraduate certificate in anthropology. And in that, they don't have to do a thesis, they just attend their lectures. Apologies. And then, of course, we also offer PhD degrees. And I think if you're interested in doing a PhD, maybe it's best to speak to me or a member of the staff in anthropology, because that involves kind of working closely with a member of staff, developing a research proposal. So that's kind of close collaboration with one of us in advance of applying. Let me move on. Okay, so at the moment, we are developing our program for next year. So it's important to keep in mind that whatever we offer next year may not be exactly the same as what we offer this year. Every year we kind of think closely about what's working, what we might do differently. We have a few new members of staff and we want to really utilize their expertise. So we will be offering different courses next year. But just to give you a sense of what you might be doing if you join us, these are what we're offering this master's program. And the compulsory course, there's one in autumn and one in spring. So the one in autumn is key concepts in anthropology, and that's really providing the kind of academic background and the apparatus to think like an anthropologist. What are the questions anthropologists ask? How do they approach problems? What type of, how do they write? What type of ways are they thinking about different issues to do with culture or whatever? And that's a compulsory course. And then students have the option to choose some options. So at the moment, there's options in anthropology and development or medical anthropology, which my colleague teaches with immunology students. There's educational anthropology, which my colleague teaches with the Department of Education. So it's quite interdisciplinary in that respect. And then in spring, the compulsory course is ethnographic research and practice, and I teach that. And that is really focused on what do anthropologists do? What does anthropological research look like? What do we mean when we mean field work? My own experience of ethnographic research or anthropological research when I was doing PhD was kind of classical anthropological research. So a year and a half living in a small town. For me, it was in Norway, learning the language, living with a family, and really trying to understand the cultural context in depth from the ground up. Other courses that we offer is Who Are We? Biology in the 21st Century, and that's offered by my colleague Ian McGonigal. There's also Global Food Systems, Climate Change and Development, and also Digital Anthropology. It's worth pointing out that often students come to us from a whole variety of degrees. So they don't always come from anthropology to do their master's, and we're aware of that. So as we are offering our modules, and particularly the compulsory modules, we are aware that students may be coming from quite a variety of kind of interdisciplinary backgrounds. And with those, they bring their own strengths. But we're also aware that they may be kind of fundamentally confused about some of the key concepts of anthropology or some of the research or practice of anthropology. So we introduce you to all of that. Now, we have two new members of staff, so I just want to introduce them briefly. The most recent is Jess Dixon, and she's an anthropologist of film and media and their industries. She will be teaching next year, and we're really excited to have her. She looks at kind of global Hollywood. She conducted research in South Africa, looking at Hollywood scenes and the making of some Hollywood films that were based there. Her interest is also on film, science fiction, but also post-colonial urbanism and media and digital areas of interest. So she'll definitely be offering courses next year, but we're just not sure yet what they'll be. Another new member of staff that I just want to introduce you to, who is actually currently featuring on our master's program, is Jabu Chipangura, and his area of interest is at the intersection of archaeology, anthropology, heritage studies, and museology. Sorry. He comes from archaeology as a background, but has worked for many years in museums, such as in Zimbabwe, but also in the University of Manchester, in their Manchester Museum. And he's very interested not only in the artifacts that you find in museums, but also the intangible heritage, language, cultural practice, issues around colonial artifact collections and the politics around that. How do we rethink how we organize heritage, how we organize our museums, particularly in a situation where there's a lot of post-colonial collections of one kind or another in different museums. So he's thinking actively about heritage in different ways. Now, for those of you who are curious about anthropology and are interested in learning more, I thought it might be worth mentioning Gillian Tett and her work on, she wrote a book called Anthrovision, and looking at the world like an anthropologist. So she did her PhD on marriage rituals, I think, in Tajikistan, if I'm correct, but then moved on to be editor of the Financial Times. She's now Master of Trinity College, Cambridge. And she makes a very strong argument that to understand current situations, politics, the rapidity with which the world is changing at the moment, we need what she calls anthrovision. So as well as big data sets, as well as sort of quantifiable data, and big data and all of that, which is definitely an asset and definitely worth having. She said we also need to look at environment. We need to look at culture. We need that sort of in-depth, ground up analysis that helps us to understand context. And I think, you know, like she says, we have big data sets. They're all brilliant and useful, but they're limited. You can only look at them effectively if you look at context, if you look at the wider environment and culture and issues like that, particularly where the context is changing. And right now, the context is changing. And I think, you know, if we were to describe contemporary world, you know, I think we can all agree the context is changing. And in a situation where there's rapid and fundamental changes in our politics, in our environment, in our social structure, in our value systems, we really need groups of people who spend the time to understand the nature of those changes, and work with real life people to understand from the ground up. It's a really anthropological endeavor is very much focused at understanding people and their perspective. And we would argue that surveys will not capture the kind of the nuance and the complexity of particularly the contemporary world. Funding for postgraduate degrees. Well, there's a couple of sites here. There's the particularly maybe for students who are applying, particularly if you're applying internationally, you might like to look at the site for Research Professional International Funding Database. But also within Maynooth University, there's a taught master's scholarship, which offers €2,000. In our department, for the last number of years, we have offered a small departmental bursary, also of €2,000. It's called the Susan Hunter Scholarship. And I think this upcoming year is probably the last year, but I would urge you, if you're interested in applying to our department or applying to Maynooth Anthropology, then keep an eye on our website, because that's where we will advertise the Susan Hunter bursary or scholarship in material culture. And Susan is one of our own past students. She said she found her own education in Maynooth so rewarding. She did a BA, she did a master's, and then she approached the department, and approached the university saying, I want to fund master's students each year for the next 5 years in order to help them out financially, because I think this is a really important education to have, which of course we're very, very grateful for. Careers. So you can see that there's a huge variety of careers in which you find anthropologists, everything from international development, government, education, museums. The National Museum of Ireland, just a year or two ago, was applying for ethnographers in order to understand some of their collections. Also art and design. My own background is interested in the politics of design, where I did research in Sweden on IKEA and Swedish design. Charitable organizations, of course, user experience, so you find them in business. So you tend to find anthropologists anywhere where you need a kind of close, complex understanding of cultural context and how people are behaving, and why they are behaving in the way they are. So these anthropological skills are particularly important in our global interconnected world. We need people to understand cultural difference, And it prepares students for a wide variety of professions in all of these careers, as I've mentioned. So this is just underlining that it's a job skill in an information-based global economy where understanding cultural difference is crucial, both from local to international contexts. And again, this is just outlined some of the places that you find anthropologists, everything from community work, health professions, NGO development projects, corporate world, and whatever. And the Toronto Star columnist says, I keep encountering anthropologists who help more in understanding how the world works today than other experts do, even in their own fields. And I really want to underline that. I think if you want kind of a close understanding of cultural complexity, anthropology, you can't do better than going for anthropology. This is my email address. This is actually a little bit blurred, but some pictures of some of my colleagues. Do look at the Anthropology Department website. That's where we have our most up-to-date information, and you'll find all of the material there. So I will stop now, and I'll hand you over to my colleagues, and then we can ask some questions, and Kieren can talk a little bit about their offerings. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Pauline. And I really appreciate your introduction there with regards to the Centre for Global Development, which I will speak on. The Centre for Global Development is a new aspect of the Department of Anthropology. It was previously self-contained in the Department of International Development, as part of the Faculty for Social Sciences here in Maynooth University. But a decision was taken, given, I suppose, the close nature of the work, to place the Department of International Development in the Department of Anthropology as the Centre for Global Development. And there will be various synergies from that, some of which I will describe, but also it means that colleagues that have a great curiosity around how the world works and hoping to make a positive difference, it facilitates synergies in that regard where colleagues can work together. So, the philosophy of the Centre for Global Development is that we live in a dynamic world, but the challenge is to make it a better one. And in that sense, we look at issues such as climate change, the impact of that. We look at relationships with the Global South, and the changing dynamic around global relations across the world. We look at geopolitical challenges, look at issues such as war and conflict, which is very much to the fore in today's world, and issues such as food security, and examine how, I suppose, we as humans can have a more peaceful, a more integrated, and a more fair, equitable existence. And it promotes, within the teaching that we do within the centre, it promotes the nature of agency. Yeah, that we can change our environment, and that we have, as I said, a capacity for agency in that regard. One of the key tools that we lean on during our teaching, or throughout our teaching, is the Global Sustainable Development Goals, as introduced through the UN, and we examine their implementation. My own particular interest area is in conflict and security and development issues. So, in particular, SDG 16, which promotes the notion of um, institutions within governments that are capable of creating an environment that people want to live in and feel that their human rights are protected within that, and that they feel safe within those environments. And that's, I suppose, in a nutshell, what these global development goals want to achieve through SDG 16 in particular. So who are we looking for? What type of students? Who should apply? Those that are passionate about the environment, those that are passionate about human rights, those that feel that they can contribute or wish to contribute to issues of peace and justice in their environment. And I'm particularly interested in students that want to get their hands dirty in this regard. It's imperfect. It will be imperfect actions, but we are very interested in motivated students who want to be informed about these issues and given the tools that they can make a difference in their environment. Those students will go on following our programs to work with organizations, with businesses, with government departments, and groups that have an active interest in these issues. So, what do we teach? We teach an MA in International Development. That's primarily led by Tom Campbell, who is an academic based in our centre. We have the MA in Peace Building, Security and Development Practice, which is led by myself. And then we also have a postgraduate certificate in Global Citizen Education, and that's led by Dr. Eilish Dillon, who has a particular interest in this field and is also the head of our centre. So, where will people apply these skills in the future? Of course, you will work with organizations, businesses, and government departments, but we would see you working in international development organizations, migrants' rights, humanitarian and logistics capacities building and delivery, conflict resolution, conflict investigation, conflict analysis, those organizations that require somebody that's able to put a handle on why conflict is happening and perhaps then come up with some form of process that might help people to resolve it in a non-violent fashion. Fair trade organizations, volunteers and missionaries, and those that would like to work with state agencies, including police and military. So you will have a strong understanding of what a difference you can make to societies, how societies transform themselves economically, socially, and culturally. And that, in a nutshell, the study of how different societies transform themselves economically, socially, and culturally is what international development actually is. We have 5 staff members. As I mentioned, Dr. Eilish Dillon is the head of the department, or the head centre, excuse me. Tom Campbell leads the MA in International Development. Patrick Marrin leads our undergraduate programs, and Dr. Niamh Rooney will lead our I suppose our management development capability. Some of our modules focus very much on developing management skills for development organizations, and Niamh heads up those particular modules. So, what do you study? What do people study during these MA programs initially? The MA in International Development, modules on contemporary global issues. You have critical and participatory development. You have gender, identity and inclusion modules. And you have a dedicated research module. And they're the core elements of the MA in international development. There are elective modules. Managing development organizations, and as I mentioned earlier, that's led by Niamh Rooney. Anthropology and development, which of course is led in collaboration with our colleagues in the Department of Anthropology. Conflict, security and development, which I lead myself. And that's a module that explores, I suppose, the drivers for conflict and examines things like poverty, things like exasperation with political systems, the existing political systems, notions of territory, sovereignty, and how people approach, through their own lens, how they approach change and how they view the enactment of change and how they feel change can happen, and social activism in that behalf. And the final elective module is climate justice, food and sustainable development. So that's the MA in International Development. The MA in International Peacebuilding, Security and Development Practice examines, as I said, ways that people can get their hands dirty in trying to create a more peaceful world. We would acknowledge that conflict is ubiquitous, that it forms part of people's, I suppose, and whenever you have change, you're going to have some form of conflict. It's because of, I suppose, the different ways that it affects people. But what we will teach is peace processes in one module. So that involves conflict analysis and looking at the conflict drivers. We look at the theory of mediation, negotiation, dialogue, with a strong emphasis on negotiation capacity and building up the students' ability to negotiate, not just for themselves, but on behalf of their organization. There is an underpinning philosophy that intervention in conflict should be integrated. So that means that many different agencies and organizations have to work together in a very pressurized environment. So that demands very strong negotiation skills to facilitate what's known as an integrated approach. We will look in depth at conflict, security and development issues and look at the political philosophies behind those. We will have a module on research methods, and we'll also look at contemporary global issues, challenges and responses with a number of electives, as I've just outlined to you there before. So they're the two MA programs. If you want to get in touch with anybody with regards to the second program in particular, please contact me. Just regards to the types of students that turn up on the programs, they're always fantastic and they always seem to bring their own particular viewpoint. So in just in the last couple of years, we've had students from the US, Central America, Africa, Asia, Europe, and of course Ireland. So within that mix, normally the students' numbers in class would be anything between 10 and 20. So you get a very dynamic exchange of viewpoints there that really enriches our understanding of each other and our understanding of how we tackle the various issues that I have outlined to you there. So the final program that I'd like to mention is the postgraduate certificate in global citizen education, and that's run by Dr. Eilish Dillon. And if you want to get any information about that program, you should contact Eilish directly. So that's in my contribution. I should have mentioned as well that the MA in International Development, Security and Development Practice looks at security issues as well. And as I mentioned, some of our students go on to take up careers in policing and military organizations. So they get an understanding going into those organizations of conflict drivers and perhaps go in as a much more rounded person that will see conflict, not just in a military kinetic sense, but also being as a person that's able to analyze the drivers as well, and perhaps approach conflict resolution and conflict intervention from those perspectives as well. So thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kieren and Pauline. And I see that we've been joined by Professor Mark Maguire, who's the head of anthropology. You're very welcome, Mark, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. I can see that we have some agents and some students here on the call, which is great to see. If you have any questions, just pop them into the chat there and we will go through them. But I think both Pauline and Kieren really covered everything in such depth there. Maybe there are no questions. 40 years of anthropology at Maynooth, that's some milestone. And then to our more, I guess, recently established the centre, but they have been doing their work for many years under perhaps different names and that. It's great to see the fantastic range of possible career paths and avenues for your graduates. They can literally work anywhere or continue their research, perhaps as a PhD student or that. I'm sure our agents will be very happy to learn that. I also like the schedule of the teaching hours, the teaching days, if you like, because it allows the students time for their own self-study and reading and all of that, but it also gives them the opportunity to work. International students can work for up to 20 hours a week here. And while we always stress that your studies should come first, and if you want to work, you can, but really you're here to do the course. Most of our masters, the taught masters are 1 year, they're intensive. You hit the ground running in late September, and you really have to make that your priority. But there is the possibility there, thanks to the timetable, that you can also work perhaps part-time. Pauline mentioned some funding there, which is great to hear. So if you are interested, please get your application in, and then perhaps you would be eligible for the scholarship. The International Office also has its own scholarships. We just launched them there last week or so. They range in value from the VPI ones at 7,500. We have a small number at €5,000, and then we have quite a large number, about 25 or so awards for students, and that's a fee reduction of €1,500, so deducted from the tuition fee. If you receive an offer from us, you will be able to apply for those scholarships and awards between now and the end of March. So if you have students, or indeed yourself on the call, if you haven't made your application yet, please do so. Make sure you get it in as quickly as possible to get your offer. Once we have all the documents received for an application, you can expect a decision from our admissions team within 2 weeks. Now, that might mean that it is further released to a department, and then they hopefully will give us their decision within another 2 or 3 weeks. So you still have time to get in for the scholarships, but you need to act fairly quickly, get your application in, and we can take it from there. I don't see any questions just as yet. So if you have any, just pop them into the chat there. I also just want to let you know, for yourself or for your students, that we have accommodation both on campus and off. We have student departments. Some are located not very far from the Rowan House, where the Department of Anthropology is. And we also have the new Buckley House that we opened this year, which is just outside the gates of the university in the heart of Maynooth itself. So we have student apartments where you share the apartment with students from anywhere in the world, 3 or 4 bedrooms. You have your own bedroom, your own bathroom, and then shared kitchen and living areas. Again, once you get your offer, we will let you know when it's time to start the booking process, when you need to act. Generally, it's from May onwards, so you don't have to worry about it at this stage of the year, but you need to get your offer first to be eligible to either apply for on-campus or off-campus accommodation. Yes, I told you about the scholarships there. We will take the applications until the end of June, but for international students, if you require a visa, I really think you should get your application in by the 1st of June at the very latest. That will give you enough time to get the offer and then apply to the visa. And as you know, some of the visa offices are extremely busy during the summer months, so it might take a number of weeks for you to get your visa. So essentially, I think the message is get your application in over the coming weeks, next 2 or 3 months, and then get your offer as soon as possible. Still no questions there. That's sometimes a good sign. It means we've answered everything and we haven't left anything unclear for you. So we have maybe another minute or two to go. If you'd like to pop your question in there and we will have a look and see. But as I say, this is being recorded. We'll share with all of our agents and the attendees today. We will also give it to our overseas recruitment team. They will have access to it and they'll be able to share it with you again in a time zone that suits them. It's impossible to pick a time that suits all of our markets because we're operating around the world. But as I say, we will share this with you afterwards. So if you have any questions, please pop them in now. Otherwise, we will say goodbye. And just a big thank you again to Pauline, to Kieren, and to Mark for joining us today. I appreciate your time. I know this is the first week of semester. It's busy. People are teaching, their students back. It's a crazy week, but I'm really glad that you could spare the time to join us today. And I don't see questions, so I guess we can leave it there. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.